The night I believed I was finally accepted as a daughter in their family, my mother-in-law placed an envelope in my hand. I thought it carried her blessings, but inside were divorce papers with my husband's signature already there. My heart shattered, yet I smiled through the tears, because she had no idea the revenge I was planning would unfold before the entire family on her grand birthday night. The dinner table was filled with laughter and chatter, but Amelie's heart felt lighter than it had in months. For the first time, she believed she was truly part of the family. Plates clinked, glasses sparkled, and when her mother-in-law, Naledi, reached out with an envelope, Amelie thought it was a blessing, maybe even a note of acceptance. Her hands trembled with hope as she opened it. But the moment her eyes caught the words, her breath froze. Divorce papers. Her husband's signature already inked across the page, sealing her fate without her knowing. The room seemed to grow quiet, though the voices around her carried on. She felt every gaze shift toward her as Naledi leaned back with a cruel smile, watching like a queen satisfied with her power. Amelie's cheeks burned, her throat tightened, and her heart shattered in a way that words could never capture. Betrayal had never felt so sharp, so public, so humiliating. The one night she thought she had been accepted was the night they tore her apart in front of everyone. She tried to hide her trembling hands, clutching the papers as though they were knives piercing into her chest. Kwame, the man she had loved and sacrificed for, wouldn't even meet her eyes. His silence cut deeper than Naledi's smile. Around her, whispers floated like daggers, some pitying, others amused. It felt as though the floor beneath her was collapsing, dragging her into a pit of shame. But Amelie did not scream, did not beg, did not crumble in front of them. She forced a smile, though her lips shook, masking the storm raging inside her. Her silence became her armor, and though her heart was bleeding, she knew one thing: this moment would never be forgotten. Naledi thought she had won, that the humiliation would break Amelie forever. But beneath the tears forming in her eyes, something else stirred.
This was not the end.
This was the beginning of something they could not see coming. Amelie locked her bedroom door and, finally, let the tears fall. They came heavy, soaking her pillow as if every drop carried the weight of years she had endured in silence. She cried until her chest ached, until her voice broke into muffled sobs. In her mind, the night replayed again and again: Naledi's cruel smile, Kwame's silence, the whispers of the relatives who once smiled in her face, but now watched her downfall like a performance. Her thoughts wandered through every insult she had swallowed just to keep peace, every sacrifice she had made to prove she was worthy of their love. She remembered how she stayed up nights cooking for family gatherings, how she held back her own dreams to support Kwame, how she endured Naledi's cutting words disguised as advice. Each memory stabbed her again, and she asked herself, was I never enough? Did none of it matter? The pain was sharp, but instead of crushing her, it began to change into something else. She wiped her tears with the back of her hand, staring at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale, but behind the broken reflection was a fire that hadn't been there before. She realized crying would not erase what they had done. It would not silence Naledi's laughter or erase the shame of being discarded like she was nothing. If she kept crying, they would win. And Amelie was not ready to give them that victory. Slowly, she sat up straighter, her breathing heavy, but steadying with every second. The pain inside her no longer felt like weakness. It felt like fuel. Every insult became a reminder of why she needed to rise. Every betrayal became a reason to fight back. Her heart was bruised, but it was still beating, and now it beat with quiet determination. In that moment of solitude, Amelie made a silent promise to herself. They thought she was broken. They thought she would disappear quietly, ashamed and defeated. But they had no idea who she truly was. She would not beg.
She would not bow.
She would not let her story end this way. Amelie's tears dried, and in their place, strength was born. This was no longer just pain. It was the beginning of her power. The days that followed felt like walking through fire for Amelie. Naledi's voice carried through the house like a trumpet, boasting to anyone who would listen. I finally freed my son, she would say with pride, as though Amelie had been a chain holding Kwame down. Relatives who once hugged Emily warmly now exchanged knowing glances, whispering behind half-covered mouths. Their eyes held curiosity, some pity, but most of them sparkled with gossip. Emily could feel the sting of their judgment without a single word being spoken. At family gatherings, Naledi shone like the queen she believed herself to be. She spoke about Kwame's future with certainty, every sentence dripping with authority. "Kwame will invest here," she would declare. "Kwame will live here. Kwame will do this." Not once did she ask his opinion, and not once did he resist. He sat there, silent, staring at the table, avoiding Emily's eyes as though meeting them would expose his weakness. The man who once vowed to stand beside her now bent like a child under his mother's shadow. Emily sat quietly, observing the patterns she had ignored for so long. Every decision, big or small, came from Naledi. What Kwame ate, where he spent his money, who he spoke to, even how he dressed, all of it was dictated by her. It wasn't just control, it was a web she had spun around him, thread by thread, until he could no longer move without her command. And now, Emily realized, she had been part of that web all along, trapped and suffocated, unable to breathe freely. Yet, while others laughed at Naledi's arrogance, Emily saw something different. Behind the polished smile and commanding tone was a woman obsessed with power. She didn't just want to protect her son, she wanted to own him, to control every piece of his life like a puppet master. And anyone who threatened that control, Emily most of all, had to be cut out. Emily's heart ached at the betrayal, but her mind sharpened. This wasn't just about a broken marriage anymore. It was about exposing the truth, that Naledi's empire of respect was built on lies, manipulation, and fear. While Naledi celebrated her victory, Emily silently watched, quietly planning. Because one day soon, the web Naledi had woven would tighten around her instead. Emily wandered through the market one afternoon, her heart heavy but her face calm, as though she were only there for groceries. Yet inside, she felt hollow, drifting with no direction. That's when she heard a familiar voice call her name. She turned, and there stood the Biso, her childhood friend, the boy who once defended her from bullies, the boy whose laughter used to make the world feel lighter. Years had passed, but his eyes held the same warmth, the same honesty she had forgotten existed. At first, she forced a smile, trying to hide her pain, but the Biso saw through it instantly. "Emily," he said softly, "you don't have to pretend with me." The words cracked her shield, and for the first time, she let someone see the sorrow she carried. They sat on a bench under the shade of an old jacaranda tree, and Emily told him everything about the dinner table, the divorce papers, Naledi's cruel smile, and the whispers of the family. She spoke until her voice trembled, and tears slipped down her cheeks. The Biso listened without interruption, his eyes steady, his presence strong. When she finally stopped, expecting pity, he surprised her. "Emily," he said firmly, "you are not ending here. You are only beginning." His voice was calm, but it carried a power that struck deep into her soul. He reminded her of who she was before the pain, before the marriage that suffocated her. "You have always been stronger than the storms around you. They think they've broken you, but I see a woman who has only just begun to rise." Those words wrapped around her heart like fire, chasing away the cold that had lived there since that night. Emily felt something stir inside her, something she thought was gone. Courage. The Biso's presence was like a mirror, reflecting back the strength she had buried under years of sacrifice and silence. As they parted, the Biso placed his hand gently over hers. "Promise me one thing," he said, looking straight into her eyes. "Don't surrender. Not to them.
Not to the pain.
You are destined for more than this." Emily nodded slowly, and for the first time in weeks, she felt her lips curve into a genuine smile. Walking away, she no longer felt like a broken woman. She felt like a storm waiting to rise. Emily was sitting quietly in the corner of the living room when she overheard Naledi's voice booming with excitement. She was on the phone, speaking about her upcoming grand birthday celebration. "It will be the event of the year," Naledi bragged, her tone dripping with pride. "Everyone will be there. Family, friends, business partners. I will show them all how blessed I am." Emily's heart skipped a beat as she listened. This wasn't just any party. It was a gathering of the entire community, a stage larger than Naledi could ever imagine. And in that instant, a seed was planted in Amelie's mind. She pictured it, the hall filled with laughter, music, and people dressed in their finest clothes. Naledi standing in the center, adored and admired, soaking in every compliment like a queen. And then she imagined the silence, the shock, when her secrets were exposed in front of everyone she sought to impress. Amelie's pain began to twist into something sharper, something purposeful. The thought of Naledi's pride shattering in public gave her a rush of strength she hadn't felt in a long time. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Amelie's mind refused to rest. The betrayal, the humiliation, the endless whispers, all of it circled back to one truth: she needed to reclaim her dignity. And what better way than to use Naledi's own stage, her own celebration? As the moment everything unraveled, the birthday party would no longer be Naledi's night of glory, it would become Amelie's night of justice. She began to sketch the outlines of her plan in her thoughts. She didn't have all the pieces yet, but the vision was clear. She would not confront Naledi in private where her words could be denied or twisted. No, she would do it in front of everyone. Every relative, every friend, every person Naledi had fooled into believing she was a noble, flawless matriarch. For the first time since the divorce papers landed in her hands, Amelie felt alive again. She wasn't just surviving, she was preparing. Naledi thought she had ended Amelie's story, but she had only created the perfect chance for Amelie to rise. And now the stage was set. The party meant for celebration would become the night of revelation. Amelie knew that courage alone would not be enough. If she was going to confront Naledi, she needed proof, cold, undeniable truth that no one could dismiss as bitterness or lies. So, quietly and carefully, she began to watch, to listen, to gather every piece of evidence that revealed the woman behind the mask. She started with the household documents. While others slept, she slipped into the study, her heart pounding, her ears sharp for footsteps. There, hidden in neatly stacked folders, she discovered papers that spoke louder than any insult Naledi had ever thrown. Bank statements showing money quietly transferred to secret accounts. Records of land bought under false names. Loans disguised as gifts. Each discovery sent chills down her spine, but also strengthened her resolve. Naledi was not just cruel, she was corrupt. Amelie remembered the times Naledi boasted about her influence, how she always had the final say in family matters. Now, Amelie saw why. Among the papers, she found letters regarding Kwame's inheritance, wealth from his late father that should have been his by right. But Naledi had twisted the terms, manipulating documents to ensure control stayed firmly in her hands. Kwame thought he was a man making his own decisions, but in truth, he was just a puppet dancing to his mother's strings. Amelie carefully copied everything she found, hiding the evidence in a place Naledi would never think to look. She carried her phone like a weapon, recording conversations when Naledi let her tongue run wild. There were moments when Naledi bragged to close friends about her power, laughing about how easy it was to bend people to her will. Amelie captured every word, every smirk, every slip of arrogance that revealed the truth. Day by day, the pieces came together like a puzzle. What once seemed like whispers of cruelty now stood as undeniable proof of lies, manipulation, and greed. Each detail she gathered was no longer just paper or sound. It was ammunition, a weapon she would unleash on the night of the grand party. Amelie felt fear, yes, but alongside it grew a steady fire. Naledi had underestimated her, had thought she would drown in shame. But instead, she was building something powerful, something unstoppable. By the time the birthday night arrived, Amelie would not come empty-handed. She would come carrying the truth, and the truth would burn brighter than Naledi's empire of lies. Amelie was in the garden when Kwame finally approached her. For days, he had avoided her, but now his steps were heavy with pride and arrogance. He stood tall, his arms folded, his face carrying the same coldness she had seen at the dinner table that night. "Amelie," he said, his voice laced with mockery, "did you really think you could ever fit into this family? Did you truly believe my mother would accept you as one of us?" His words sliced through the air, sharp and cruel. Emily's chest tightened, but she stayed still, her eyes fixed on him. He smirked, enjoying the power he thought he held. "You were never enough," he continued, leaning closer, his tone dripping with scorn. "Not your cooking, not your manners, not your love. You embarrassed me. You embarrassed us all. And now, you are nothing but a mistake I've already erased." For a moment, her heart ached. This was the man she had once loved, the man she sacrificed for, the man she defended when others questioned him. His words should have broken her, but instead, something inside her shifted. The pain hardened, turning into steel. She looked at him, not with tears this time, but with a calm strength that unsettled him. "You're right," she said quietly, her voice steady. "I will never be enough for a family built on lies. But do not mistake my silence for weakness. You may think you've erased me, Kwame, but you have no idea what I am capable of." Her tone carried no anger, only certainty, and that shook him more than if she had screamed. Kwame laughed bitterly, brushing off her words, but Emily no longer cared for his opinion. At that moment, she realized the love she once clung to was gone, replaced by a fierce determination. This was no longer about winning him back or proving her worth to his mother. This was about her dignity, something no one could take away from her again. As Kwame walked off, still blinded by arrogance, Emily felt stronger than ever. His cruelty had given her clarity. He thought he had crushed her, but in truth, he had given her the final push she needed. The revenge she planned was no longer about heartbreak. It was about reclaiming her power, her voice, her place in the world. And nothing would stop her now. The night of Naledi's birthday arrived like a festival. The hall glittered with golden drapes and sparkling chandeliers, every corner dressed in elegance. Laughter floated through the air, glasses clinked, and music filled the room with joy. Guests admired the lavish spread of food, the flowing drinks, the stage decorated with flowers and lights. It was the kind of celebration meant to impress, and Naledi was at the very center of it, glowing with pride. She moved gracefully among her guests, dressed in a gown that shimmered with every step. Compliments followed her like shadows. "You look magnificent. Only you could host a party like this." Naledi smiled, her chin raised high, soaking in the admiration as though it were her birthright. She spoke of her success, her son's future, her influence, each word a reminder of the power she held over this family and this community. Kwame stood nearby, expressionless, as though he were only an accessory to his mother's glory. The relatives whispered, friends laughed, and the music played louder. It seemed like the perfect night, the perfect crown for Naledi's pride. But perfection was about to crack. The doors opened slowly, and the room shifted. Heads turned one by one, and the music seemed to hush under the weight of silence. There, standing in the doorway, was Emily. She was uninvited, unexpected, yet radiant in a way that silenced even the whispers. She walked with grace, her dress simple yet commanding, her presence brighter than the chandeliers above. Every step she took drew eyes, and every eye carried the same question: what was she doing here? Naledi's smile faltered for the first time that night. Her hands clenched slightly, though she tried to hold her composure. Emily did not look away, did not lower her gaze. She walked straight into the hall, shoulders back, head high, as though she had come not as a guest, but as someone meant to own the room. The crowd parted as she moved forward, murmurs rising like ripples in water. Some gasped, others leaned in closer, sensing that something unforgettable was about to happen. Emily's entrance was no accident. It was a statement. And though Naledi stood proud at the center of her kingdom, it was Emily who now commanded every single eye in the room. Emily stood in the center of the glittering hall, her presence impossible to ignore. The music faded, and curious eyes turned toward her. For a moment, she let the silence linger, her calm smile disarming the room. "I came here tonight," she began softly, her voice steady but gentle, "not to cause trouble, but to speak a truth that has been buried for too long." Guests leaned forward, some confused, others intrigued. Even Naledi forced a laugh, trying to mask her unease. Emily spoke of family, of loyalty, of sacrifice, the things she believed in when she first entered this home. Her words carried warmth, almost as if she were offering gratitude. People nodded, some even smiled, but then her tone shifted. But behind these walls, behind this glitter and gold, there is another story. A story of lies, greed, and control. The hall stirred, whispers breaking the calm. Naledi's smile froze, her eyes narrowing. Emily reached into her bag and held up documents. "These," she said, her voice firm, "are records of hidden accounts, of money stolen, of land purchased under false names. All orchestrated by the woman celebrated here tonight." Gasps filled the room, eyes snapping toward Naledi. Relatives exchanged shocked looks, while business partners stiffened in their seats. Naledi tried to step forward, but Emily raised her phone. With a single click, the speakers in the hall came alive with Naledi's own voice, recordings of her bragging, confessing her schemes with laughter. The words echoed in the hall like thunder. "I control everything," Naledi's recorded voice sneered. "Kwame is nothing without me. Even his inheritance belongs to me." The crowd erupted. Some covered their mouths in shock, others muttered angrily. Kwame's face drained of color, his eyes darting around, unable to hide his shame. Naledi reached out, desperate to snatch the phone, but it was too late. The truth was out, and the walls of her pride were crumbling in front of everyone she had hoped to impress. The music had stopped, the laughter had died, and all that remained was a heavy silence broken only by gasps. Emily stood tall in the center, unshaken, her voice ringing with calm strength. "You gave me divorce papers to break me," she said, her eyes locked on Naledi. "But tonight, I return the gift. You are the one exposed. You are the one undone." And with that, the hall fell into stunned silence, the weight of her revenge pressing on every soul in the room. The hall that once rang with laughter now stood frozen in silence. All eyes were fixed on Naledi, the woman who only minutes ago had basked in glory. Her face was pale, her hands trembled as she tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. The recordings still echoed in people's minds, the documents still burned in their memory. The mighty matriarch who ruled with pride and control was suddenly stripped bare in front of everyone. Whispers swirled like a storm. Relatives shook their heads in disbelief, business partners murmured about betrayal, and friends who once admired her now stepped back in disgust. "So it was all lies," one voice whispered. "She cheated her own son," another gasped. Every whisper was a dagger, cutting deeper than Emily's words ever could. Naledi's knees weakened, and she sank into a chair, her eyes darting desperately for help. But no one reached out, not even Kwame. He stood frozen, humiliated, unable to defend the woman who had controlled him all his life. Emily, in contrast, stood tall in the center of it all. Her calm presence shone brighter than the chandeliers, her strength louder than the murmurs. She did not shout, she did not gloat, she didn't need to. The truth had spoken for her, and it was enough. She looked around the hall one last time, her eyes steady, her heart surprisingly light. Then, slowly, with grace in every step, she turned toward the doors. The crowd parted for her, no longer seeing the broken woman Naledi had tried to paint, but a woman reborn in strength. Her head was high, her shoulders unshaken, her dignity untouchable. She didn't need to stay and watch Naledi crumble further. The victory was already hers. As she walked out into the night, her voice echoed softly in narration. "They gave me divorce papers as a curse, but I turned them into my freedom. And tonight, freedom tasted sweeter than revenge." Outside, the cool air embraced her, carrying away the last remnants of her pain. Behind her, the empire of control Naledi had built was collapsing, brick by brick, secret by secret. But ahead of her, a new path opened, one where she no longer needed acceptance, where her worth was no longer in question. Emily did not just survive the storm. She walked out of it unshaken, carrying her final victory with the grace of a queen. Fire. When her mother-in-law handed her divorce papers at the dinner table, she thought her life was over. But wait until you see how Emily turned humiliation into her greatest victory. Backhand index pointing right, this is not just a story of betrayal, it's a story of revenge served in front of the entire community. Don't blink, the twist will shock you. Broken heart, right arrow crown. They tried to break her with divorce papers, but she walked out like a queen. Watch how she flipped their curse into her freedom. High voltage. Her tears turned into fire, and her silence into a weapon. You won't believe what she revealed at the birthday party.